February 2019. A whisper tore through London's elite circles, so explosive, so unthinkable, that even those spreading it could barely believe the words leaving their lips. Prince William, the future king, the devoted husband who'd won the world's heart with his storybook romance, was allegedly having an affair. Not in some distant hotel, not on a foreign tour, but at Anmer Hall, the intimate Norfolk estate gifted to him and Kate by the Queen herself, the private sanctuary where their children slept, where family dinners were served, where the fairy tale was supposed to be real. The woman? Rose Hanbury, Marchioness of Cholmondeley, Kate's close friend, their neighbour, living just 3 miles away in a Palladian palace. The alleged betrayal was so close, so personal, it felt Shakespearean. William's lawyers threatened to destroy anyone who repeated the claims. The palace went to war. But the damage was done. Overnight, Anmer Hall transformed from a symbol of royal domesticity into something far darker, a stage for deception, a setting for scandal, proof that even in the 21st century, even in a modest country house, the ancient patterns of royal betrayal could repeat themselves. This is the story of how paradise became purgatory. Anmer Hall sits on the Sandringham estate in Norfolk, approximately 120 miles north of London. The house itself is Georgian, built in the late 18th century, constructed of warm red brick that glows amber in the afternoon sun, which is, in fact, how it got its name. Anmer is thought to derive from honey-coloured, a reference to that distinctive brick that sets it apart from the grey stone of so many English country houses. The estate has always been part of the Sandringham holdings, purchased by Queen Victoria in 1862 as a country retreat for the Prince of Wales, who would later become Edward VII. Sandringham became the private property of the monarch, separate from the Crown estate, passed from sovereign to sovereign as personal inheritance. For more than 150 years, it has been where the royal family escapes from public life, where they spend Christmas, where they can, theoretically, relax. Anmer Hall was one of the estate houses, typically leased out to tenants with close connections to the royal family. In the 1970s and 1980s, it was home to the Duke and Duchess of Kent. Later, it housed other members of the extended royal circle. It was never meant to be a principal residence. It's too modest for that, with just 10 bedrooms, but it had something more valuable than grandeur: privacy. When Prince William married Catherine Middleton on April 29, 2011, in a ceremony watched by an estimated 2 billion people worldwide, the question of where they would live became immediately pressing. As second in line to the throne, William couldn't simply buy a house in the suburbs. His primary residence was, by default, royal property. The couple initially lived in a modest cottage on the Isle of Anglesey in Wales, where William was stationed as an RAF search and rescue pilot. It was deliberately low-key, deliberately normal, or as normal as life could be for a future king. But when William's military service ended, the question of a permanent home arose. The couple would eventually take up residence in apartment 1A at Kensington Palace in London, which, despite its name, is actually a 4-story, 20-room apartment that had previously been home to Princess Margaret. But London was public life. London was duty, engagements, scrutiny. What they needed was a country retreat, somewhere their children could grow up away from cameras, somewhere they could have what William's mother, Princess Diana, had always wanted for her sons: a normal childhood. In 2013, Queen Elizabeth II made her decision. She would gift Anmer Hall to William and Kate, not as a temporary residence, but as their own private country home. The gesture was significant. Sandringham was deeply personal to the Queen. It was where her father, George VI, had died in 1952, where she had learned she had become Queen. By giving William and Kate Anmer Hall, she was welcoming them into the most intimate circle of royal family life, acknowledging that they were the future of the monarchy, trusting them with a piece of the estate she cherished most. What's fascinating about this gift is what it represented. The Queen could have given them a grander property, something more obviously palatial, but Anmer Hall was the opposite of ostentatious. It was a family home, well-proportioned but not enormous, elegant but not showy. It suggested that Elizabeth understood what William and Kate wanted, not a palace, but a place where they could simply be a family. The house would need extensive renovations before the young family could move in. Between 2013 and 2015, millions of pounds were spent updating Anmer Hall, though the exact figure was never publicly disclosed. A new roof was installed. The plumbing and electrical systems were completely modernized. A conservatory was added. The kitchen was redesigned. A new driveway was constructed to improve privacy. Perhaps most tellingly, a tennis court was built in the grounds, a sign that this was meant to be a place for leisure, for sport, for the kind of active family life William and Kate envisioned. By 2015, Anmer Hall was ready. William and Kate moved in with Prince George, who was nearly 2 years old, and Princess Charlotte, who had just been born that May. For the first time, they had a home that was truly theirs, a place where William could be just a father, where Kate could be just a mother, where their children could play in the garden without photographers at the gates. I believe this was the moment when the modern royal family's experiment in normalcy truly began. Anmer Hall wasn't just a house, it was a statement of intent. It said that the future king would not be raised entirely within palace walls, that there would be space for muddy boots and bicycle rides and Sunday roasts. It was the physical manifestation of everything William and Kate had promised when they married, a different kind of royal life, grounded in family rather than formality. For 3 years, it worked beautifully. Between 2015 and 2017, Anmer Hall became the primary residence of the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. This was a remarkable arrangement, the future King of England essentially living as a country gentleman in Norfolk rather than in London. William had taken a job as an air ambulance pilot with the East Anglian Air Ambulance, based at Cambridge Airport, approximately 60 miles south of Anmer Hall. It was real work, not ceremonial duty. He flew night shifts, responding to medical emergencies across the region, earning a salary of around £40,000 per year, which he donated to charity. The setup allowed for something unprecedented in modern royal history: genuine privacy. Unlike Kensington Palace, where tourists and paparazzi constantly hovered, Anmer Hall was protected by the broader Sandringham estate. The house sits at the end of a private drive, surrounded by woodland. The nearest public road is half a mile away. Neighbours in the area, wealthy landowners, aristocratic families who had lived in Norfolk for generations, understood and respected the implicit code of discretion. You didn't talk about the royals to the press. You didn't photograph them at the local shops. You pretended as much as possible that they were just another family. And by most accounts, William and Kate embraced this normal life with genuine enthusiasm. Kate was frequently spotted at the local Sainsbury's supermarket in King's Lynn, pushing a shopping cart like any other mother. She took George to playgroups at the local church hall. The family attended Sunday services at St. Mary Magdalene Church on the Sandringham estate, the same church where the royal family gathers every Christmas, but during ordinary weekends they were just parishioners, not dignitaries. William, too, seemed to relish the anonymity. Colleagues at the air ambulance service later described him as hard-working and professional, someone who genuinely wanted to be judged on his merits as a pilot rather than his title. After long shifts, he would return to Anmer Hall exhausted but, according to friends, happier than he'd been in years. This was the life he'd always wanted, the life his mother had dreamed of for him. The house itself became a true family home. George and Charlotte had a playroom filled with toys. The garden had swings and a climbing frame. William installed a football goal on the lawn. He's a passionate Aston Villa supporter and wanted his children to grow up loving the sport. Kate created a vegetable garden, growing tomatoes and carrots and lettuce. It was all intensely, deliberately normal. This was also the period when William and Kate developed their Norfolk social circle. And this is where Rose Hanbury enters the story, not yet as a figure of scandal, but as a friend, a neighbor, part of the fabric of their new life. To understand how the alleged affair scandal developed, you need to understand the unique social world of rural Norfolk aristocracy. This is not London society with its flashy wealth and celebrity culture. Norfolk's landed gentry operate according to older, quieter rules. Lineage matters more than money. Discretion is paramount. Everyone knows everyone else. Families have been intermarrying for centuries, and outsiders, even royal outsiders, must prove themselves worthy of acceptance. Rose Hanbury, the Marchioness of Cholmondeley, was born Sarah Rose Hanbury in 1984, making her just 2 years older than Kate Middleton. But while Kate came from upper-middle-class Berkshire stock, her parents ran a successful mail-order party supply business, Rose was born into the heart of the British establishment. Her grandmother, Lady Elizabeth Lambert, was a bridesmaid at Queen Elizabeth II's wedding in 1947. Rose grew up surrounded by aristocracy, educated at the exclusive Stowe School, and moved easily through the upper echelons of British society. Before her marriage, Rose worked as a model and was part of a group of well-connected young women known in the British press as the Turner Marlboroughs, named after their Mayfair office address. These weren't typical models. They were aristocratic girls who occasionally did fashion shoots for society magazines, moving between photo studios and debutante balls with equal ease. Rose had appeared in publications like Tatler and was known for her striking blonde beauty and impeccable pedigree. In 2009, at the age of 25, Rose married David George Philip Cholmondeley, the 7th Marquis of Cholmondeley, pronounced Chumley. David was 23 years her senior, having been born in 1960, and he was one of the most significant aristocrats in England. The Cholmondeley title dates back to 1815, but the family's history stretches back much further. David's primary residence was, and is, Houghton Hall, one of the finest Palladian mansions in Britain, built in the 1720s for Britain's first Prime Minister, Sir Robert Walpole. Houghton Hall sits on 1,000 acres of Norfolk parkland, just 3 miles from Anmer Hall. The house is magnificent, designed by Colin Campbell and with interiors by William Kent. It's a masterpiece of early Georgian architecture, filled with one of the most important private art collections in Britain. David Cholmondeley had inherited not just a title and a house, but a cultural legacy that required constant maintenance, both financial and social. The marriage between Rose and David produced 3 children rapidly, twin boys, Alexander and Oliver, born in 2009, and a daughter Iris, born in 2016. By all appearances, Rose settled into the role of Marchioness with grace and energy. She took on the restoration of Houghton Hall's gardens, opening them to the public and hosting cultural events. She remained involved in the London social scene, but increasingly focused her life on Norfolk. This is how she and Kate became friends. When William and Kate moved to Anmer Hall in 2015, Rose was one of the first neighbours to reach out. It made perfect sense. They were close in age, both mothers of young children, both navigating the peculiar challenges of country house life. Rose could serve as a guide to Norfolk society, introducing Kate to the right people, explaining the unspoken rules of the area. The Cholmondeleys were also closely connected to the royal family. David serves as Lord Great Chamberlain, a hereditary position that involves organizing major state occasions. By 2016, Kate and Rose were frequently photographed at the same social events. They attended the same dinner parties. Their children had playdates at Houghton Hall and Anmer Hall. Rose and David were invited to William and Kate's private gatherings. When William and Kate hosted dinners at Anmer Hall, the Cholmondeleys were often on the guest list. Everything suggested a warm, uncomplicated friendship between two couples who had much in common. I think it's important to understand that this world, the world of Norfolk aristocracy, of country estates and private dinner parties and old family connections, operates according to codes that outsiders struggle to comprehend. Friendships are formed not just on personal compatibility, but on social equivalence. The Cholmondeleys and the Cambridges were, in a sense, the two most important families in Norfolk. Their friendship was almost inevitable, structured by geography, class, and shared responsibilities. But these codes also create vulnerabilities. In this world, people spend enormous amounts of time together in private settings. Country house weekends, shooting parties, intimate dinners. These are the fabric of aristocratic social life. Proximity breeds familiarity. Familiarity can breed complications. The first hint that something was wrong came in February 2019, though not in the tabloids. It began, as these things often do, with a brief item in a society gossip column. The Sun newspaper published a small story suggesting that Kate Middleton and Rose Hanbury had experienced a falling out, and that Kate had asked William to phase Rose out of their social circle. The item was vague, offering no real details about what had caused the rift, but it was enough to spark curiosity among royal watchers. For anyone following royal news closely, this was significant. Kate Middleton rarely had public disagreements with anyone. Her public image was carefully cultivated, gracious, diplomatic, conflict-averse. For her to have a serious enough falling out with a friend that it warranted William's intervention suggested something substantial had occurred. The story might have died there, minor aristocratic friendship drama, nothing more, except for what happened next. In early April 2019, American entertainment lawyer and gossip purveyor Giles Coren posted a tweet that would change everything. The tweet was quickly deleted, but not before it had been screenshot and circulated widely. In it, Coren appeared to reference rumors of an affair between William and Rose Hanbury, though he didn't name names explicitly. The tweet was coy, designed to skirt libel laws while making the allegation clear enough for those in the know. Within hours, the story exploded across social media. The name Rose Hanbury began trending on Twitter. Old photographs of Rose and Kate together at events were dredged up and analyzed. Images of Houghton Hall appeared alongside images of Anmer Hall, with people calculating the distance between them, 2.7 miles by road, even less across the fields. Suddenly, the falling out between Kate and Rose took on a much darker significance. What's remarkable is how quickly the story developed a life of its own, even without mainstream media coverage. British newspapers, constrained by the UK's strict defamation laws, could not print the allegations without substantial proof. But American websites, YouTubers, and social media had no such restrictions. The story spread like wildfire across the Atlantic, with American celebrity gossip sites publishing detailed accounts of the alleged affair, naming both William and Rose explicitly, and speculating about everything from secret meetings at Anmer Hall to how long the affair had supposedly been going on. By mid-April, the allegations had reached such a fever pitch that Kensington Palace was forced to respond, an extraordinary step, given the palace's general policy of never commenting on gossip or speculation. On April 9, 2019, legal representatives for William issued a rare statement describing the affair rumors as false and highly damaging, and warning media outlets that they would face legal action if they published the allegations. It was the most aggressive response to tabloid speculation that William had issued in his entire public life. I believe this response, while understandable from a legal standpoint, actually intensified public interest in the story. The palace's silence on most gossip had always operated on the principle that responding gave credibility to baseless rumors. But here they were, deploying lawyers, issuing threats, taking the allegations seriously enough to fight back. To many observers, this suggested the palace was genuinely worried, not necessarily because the allegations were true, but because they were so damaging that they needed to be aggressively suppressed. Rose Hanbury and her husband also issued a statement through their lawyers, calling the rumors completely false and emphasizing their family's friendship with the Cambridges. But by then, the story had achieved critical mass. It didn't matter what the official denials said. The public had already formed their own narratives, their own theories, their own convictions about what had really happened at Anmer Hall. What followed was a fascinating split in media coverage between the UK and the United States. In Britain, newspapers adhered strictly to the legal warnings. The Daily Mail, the Telegraph, the Times, major outlets that usually covered every detail of royal life, maintained near total silence on the specific allegations. They could report on the falling out between Kate and Rose in vague terms. They could note that legal threats had been issued, but they could not name William and Rose in connection with affair allegations without risking devastating libel lawsuits. British libel law is notoriously plaintiff-friendly. The burden of proof falls on the defendant. The publisher must prove the truth of what they've printed, not simply that they had reasonable grounds to believe it. For a newspaper to publish affair allegations about the future king, they would need ironclad evidence. Photographs, videos, sworn testimony from multiple credible sources. Absent that, printing the story would be financial suicide. But American media operated under different rules. The First Amendment provides much broader protections for press freedom. American websites and magazines could, and did, publish detailed accounts of the alleged affair with relative impunity. In Touch Weekly ran a cover story titled Prince William's Alleged Affair in April 2019, featuring photographs of Rose Hanbury and speculating about secret meetings and Kate's devastation. Other American outlets followed suit, each adding their own speculative details. The result was a surreal situation where British people could read detailed accounts of the alleged affair about their own future king, only by accessing American websites. British tabloids ran stories about the American coverage of the story, a kind of reporting at one remove that allowed them to discuss the allegations without technically making them directly. Social media, of course, recognized no borders. Twitter and Instagram became the primary venues where the story was dissected, analyzed, and endlessly discussed. Hashtags like #PrinceWilliamAffair and #Rose Hanbury trended repeatedly. Amateur sleuths examined every photograph of William and Kate from the previous months, looking for signs of tension. Others tracked Rose's social media activity, or rather, her sudden absence from social media as she stopped posting in the wake of the allegations. YouTube became perhaps the most influential platform for the story. Channels dedicated to royal gossip produced video after video analyzing the scandal, many racking up hundreds of thousands of views. These videos operated in a grey zone, not quite journalism, not quite entertainment, often sourcing information from anonymous palace insiders or interpreting body language in photographs. But they fed an enormous appetite for content about the scandal, especially among international audiences for whom the intricacies of British libel law meant nothing. What's fascinating is how the story evolved in this environment. Without mainstream media verification, the allegations became increasingly elaborate. Some versions claimed the affair had been going on for years. Others suggested Kate had known about it but stayed silent to protect the monarchy. Still others proposed that Rose's youngest child, Iris, born in 2016, might be William's, a particularly cruel and baseless speculation that nonetheless gained traction online. The conspiracy theories multiplied. Why had William and Kate suddenly increased their public appearances together in May 2019? Was it a public relations strategy to present a united front? Why had Rose Hanbury stopped appearing at events the Cambridges attended? Was there a ban in place? Why were there so few photographs of William and Kate at Anmer Hall after February 2019? Had they stopped using the house? Each question spawned a dozen theories, and without authoritative reporting to provide facts, the vacuum was filled with speculation. The story became a kind of collective fiction, shaped by thousands of voices online, each adding their own narrative flourishes, their own interpretations, their own claims to inside knowledge. I think what's most revealing about this media divergence is what it tells us about the modern information ecosystem. Truth and rumor can coexist indefinitely when there's no authoritative arbiter to establish facts. The British media's legal constraints meant the public never received definitive reporting on what actually happened. The American media's freewheeling approach meant the public received plenty of reporting, but much of it unverified and sensationalized. Social media provided volume, but not clarity. And in the absence of clarity, the story persisted, shape-shifting but never quite disappearing. For all the speculation, for all the headlines and hashtags and breathless YouTube videos, there was never any concrete evidence of an affair between Prince William and Rose Hanbury. Not a single photograph of them together in a compromising situation. No credible witness who claimed to have seen them together romantically. No text messages, no emails, no communication of any kind that suggested anything beyond neighborly friendship. The entire scandal rested on a foundation of circumstantial observations and anonymous sources. The falling out between Kate and Rose, real or exaggerated, became the scaffolding on which an entire narrative of betrayal was constructed. But a falling out between friends proves nothing about an affair. Friendships end for countless reasons: personality conflicts, social slights, disagreements about children, simple drift. The legal threats from Kensington Palace, rather than serving as proof of guilt as conspiracy theorists suggested, actually demonstrated how seriously libel law is taken in the UK. The palace had a duty to protect William's reputation against false allegations, regardless of whether there was any truth to them. Silence could be interpreted as tacit confirmation. Aggressive denial was the only option. The supposed evidence that circulated online fell into several categories, none of them credible. Body language analysis. Amateur psychologists on YouTube claimed they could see tension between William and Kate in photographs from early 2019. Kate's smile looked forced, they said. William wouldn't meet her eyes. These interpretations told us more about the observer's preconceptions than about any objective reality. Professional body language experts, when asked by more serious outlets, noted that still photographs can be misleading and that drawing conclusions from them is pseudoscience. Timeline speculation. Some claimed the affair must have occurred during William's time as an air ambulance pilot, when he was working night shifts and away from home. But William's shifts were documented, his whereabouts accounted for. The East Anglian Air Ambulance is a professional service that keeps logs. There were no mysterious gaps in his schedule. Social media silence. After April 2019, Rose Hanbury largely disappeared from public view. She stopped attending events where she might encounter the Cambridges. Her Instagram account went dark. This was interpreted as guilt or shame. But it could just as easily be interpreted as a sensible response to having one's name dragged through international tabloids. Who would want to appear in public under those circumstances? Anonymous sources, various gossip websites claimed palace insiders had confirmed the affair. But these sources were never named, never verified, and often contradicted each other. One claimed the affair had lasted months. Another said it was a one-time indiscretion. One said Kate had confronted William. Another said she'd learned of it from Rose's husband. The inconsistencies suggested these weren't real sources, but inventions designed to add credibility to speculation. What we do know for certain is more mundane. Kate and Rose were friends in 2016 to 2017. By early 2019, they were no longer close. The Cambridges and the Cholmondeleys, once regular fixtures at each other's social events, stopped appearing together publicly. This social distance could indicate a serious falling out. But falling outs between friends happen constantly without affair drama. Perhaps Rose said something unkind about Kate's parenting. Perhaps there was a dispute about their children. Perhaps the friendship simply ran its course. The lack of evidence didn't stop the story. In fact, the lack of evidence became part of the story. The palace's ability to suppress proof was seen as evidence of a cover-up. The media's silence in the UK was interpreted as collusion with the monarchy. Every absence of proof was reinterpreted as proof of absence, the absence of public evidence, that is, which must mean powerful forces were hiding the truth. I find it remarkable how little hard evidence was required to sustain such an elaborate scandal. In previous eras, before social media, a story like this would have died for lack of confirmation. But in 2019, the story could sustain itself purely on speculation, feeding on public fascination with royal scandal, on class resentment toward aristocracy, on the internet's insatiable appetite for content. Truth became almost irrelevant. The narrative had become more real than reality. Throughout the scandal, Anmer Hall itself took on a strange, symbolic importance. This house, which had represented William and Kate's escape from public life, became in the public imagination the setting for alleged betrayal. The gardens where George and Charlotte played became, in tabloid shorthand, where the affair took place. The private drives where William returned from work became routes for supposed secret meetings. Every architectural detail of the house that had once symbolized domestic happiness was reinterpreted through the lens of scandal. Photographs of Anmer Hall appeared constantly in articles about the allegations. The warm red brick that had seemed so welcoming now looked secretive in these images, as if the house itself were hiding something. The isolated location that had once meant privacy now suggested concealment. The very features that made Anmer Hall perfect for a young family, the seclusion, the distance from London, the protective buffer of the Sandringham estate, made it, in the scandal narrative, the ideal location for an illicit relationship. What's particularly interesting is how the proximity of Houghton Hall to Anmer Hall became a focal point. The fact that Rose lived just 3 miles away was mentioned in nearly every article, often with a map showing the two estates. The implication was clear. The closeness made an affair logistically simple. William could walk between the two houses in under an hour. It would be easy to slip away, easy to maintain secrecy. But this geographic proximity had always been public knowledge. It was, in fact, one of the reasons the two families became friends in the first place. When the friendship was flourishing, the nearness of the two estates was portrayed as convenient and pleasant. How nice for Kate to have a friend so close by. But once the scandal broke, that same proximity became sinister. The transformation of Anmer Hall's image in the public consciousness reveals something profound about how we construct narratives around physical spaces. A house is just a house, brick, wood, glass, arranged in a particular configuration. But we invest houses with meaning, with symbolism, with emotional significance. Anmer Hall had been invested with the meaning of royal domesticity, of William and Kate's successful modernization of the monarchy, of a family home where traditions could be honored while new, more relatable values flourished. When that narrative cracked, or appeared to crack, the house had to be reimagined. It couldn't remain a symbol of domestic happiness if that happiness was now in question. So it became something else, a symbol of deception, of the gap between public image and private reality, of the idea that even the most carefully constructed modern royal life might conceal the same old patterns of aristocratic scandal. In reality, Anmer Hall remained what it had always been, a 10-bedroom Georgian house in Norfolk where a family lived. The house didn't change, but our collective perception of it transformed utterly. By late 2019, William and Kate's use of Anmer Hall had indeed changed, though whether this was connected to the scandal remained pure speculation. They began spending more time at Kensington Palace in London. When they were in Norfolk, they seemed to maintain a lower profile. The local sightings of Kate at the supermarket became less frequent. The family still attended Christmas at Sandringham with the broader royal family, but Anmer Hall was no longer portrayed in the media as their primary residence. Some interpreted this as proof that the house had been tainted by the scandal, that William and Kate could no longer bear to spend time there. Others suggested the change was simply practical. As their children grew older and their royal duties increased, London made more sense as a base. Still others pointed out that COVID-19 lockdowns beginning in early 2020 made it difficult to know where any family was spending their time. I believe what happened to Anmer Hall in the public imagination is a cautionary tale about the fragility of image. The house had been presented to the world as evidence of William and Kate's successful balancing of royal duty and normal family life. But that presentation meant the house carried enormous symbolic weight. When scandal struck, or appeared to strike, that symbolic weight became a burden. The house couldn't simply be a house anymore. It had to mean something about the state of the marriage, the truth of the allegations, the reality behind the carefully managed public image. If Anmer Hall became the symbolic center of the scandal, Rose Hanbury became its ghost. After the initial legal statement denying the affair, Rose essentially vanished from public life. For someone who had been a fixture of Norfolk and London society, attending galas, hosting events at Houghton Hall, appearing in society magazines, this withdrawal was dramatic and complete. Her Instagram account, which had previously featured photographs of her children, her gardens, and her work at Houghton Hall, went silent in April 2019. No new posts appeared. Comments on old posts were disabled. It was as if she had simply ceased to exist in the digital sphere. She stopped attending the events where she had previously been a regular presence. The annual Houghton International Horse Trials, a major Norfolk social event that Rose had helped organize, went ahead in May 2019 without her public involvement. Directly connected to Houghton Hall's art, directly connected to Houghton Hall's art collection and gardens, which Rose had championed, featured other members of the Cholmondeley family, but not Rose herself. This absence was carefully noted by gossip watchers. Each event Rose skipped was catalogued as further evidence of something, whether guilt, shame, or simply a desire to avoid the media circus was open to interpretation. The fact that she and David Cholmondeley did not issue further statements, did not give interviews, did not attempt to actively combat the narrative, was seen as significant. But significant of what? Was silence an admission, or simply the dignified response of someone who felt any further engagement would only fan the flames? There was one notable public appearance. In June 2019, Rose attended a state banquet at Buckingham Palace for President Trump's state visit. Her presence there was mandated by her husband's position as Lord Great Chamberlain, a role that requires attendance at major state occasions. Photographs from the event showed Rose in an elegant gown, maintaining her composure, but noticeably not interacting with either William or Kate, who were also present. The three of them occupied the same vast room, but might as well have been in different buildings for all the connection between them. That image, Rose at one end of the palace, the Cambridges at the other, all performing their duties while maintaining perfect distance, became iconic in the scandal's visual record. It seemed to confirm that something had irreparably fractured, even if the exact nature of that fracture remained unclear. The question of what Rose herself thought, what she experienced during those months when her name was a trending topic and her face appeared in international tabloids, remained unanswered. She gave no interviews. She issued no personal statements. She allowed the lawyers to speak on her behalf and otherwise maintained perfect silence. I think there's something almost cruel in how the scandal consumed Rose's public identity. Before 2019, she was known as the Marchioness of Cholmondeley, a society figure with her own accomplishments and interests. After the scandal, she became the woman accused of having an affair with Prince William. Her entire public identity collapsed into this one unproven allegation. Everything else about her, her work, her family, her actual life, became footnotes to the scandal. And yet she could do nothing to change this. Speaking publicly would only generate more headlines. Remaining silent allowed the narrative to continue unchallenged. It was a no-win situation, one faced by every person accused in the court of public opinion without being given the chance to properly defend themselves. By 2020, as the COVID-19 pandemic dominated headlines and royal watchers' attention shifted to the more dramatic crisis of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's departure from royal duties, the Rose Hanbury story began to fade. Not disappear entirely, it remained a favorite topic among royal gossip, YouTube channels, and conspiracy theorists, but it lost its mainstream urgency. Rose remained largely out of public view, resuming some of her work at Houghton Hall, but maintaining a much lower profile than she had before 2019. William and Kate's handling of the scandal demonstrated the paradox at the heart of modern royal PR: how to respond to allegations without giving them credibility by addressing them directly. After the initial legal threat in April 2019, Kensington Palace said nothing further about the matter. No clarifications, no additional denials, no interviews where the topic was addressed, even obliquely. Instead, William and Kate simply continued their lives and their duties as if the scandal didn't exist. Throughout April and May 2019, as the story raged online, the couple maintained their schedule of public engagements. They visited mental health organizations. They attended charity galas. They made speeches about early childhood development and conservation. In every photograph, every video, they appeared exactly as they always had: professional, composed, united. This strategy of normalcy was deliberate. By refusing to alter their behavior, by giving no indication that the allegations had affected them at all, they signaled that the story had no substance. If they had suddenly increased their joint appearances or released personal statements about the strength of their marriage, it would suggest the allegations had merit and required addressing. By proceeding as usual, they dismissed the story without dignifying it with a response. There were, however, subtle shifts that eagle-eyed observers noted. William and Kate did seem to coordinate their schedules more carefully in the months following the scandal's peak. Previously, they might attend different events on the same day, splitting royal duties to cover more ground. After April 2019, they appeared together more frequently. Whether this was strategic or coincidental remained unclear, but it had the effect of providing regular visual evidence of their partnership. The couple also seemed more physically affectionate in public appearances during this period. Royal protocol generally discourages overt displays of affection. Holding hands is acceptable, but extended touching is not. Yet in photographs from mid-2019, William and Kate appeared more tactile than usual. His hand on her back, their arms linked, standing closer together. Again, this could be interpreted as a deliberate PR strategy to project unity, or it could simply be how they naturally were, now noticed more carefully because of the scandal's context. Perhaps the most significant public appearance came in June 2019 at Royal Ascot, one of the British social calendar's most prominent events. The Cambridges attended together, arriving by carriage in the traditional royal procession. Kate wore a pale blue dress and an elaborate hat. William was in morning dress. They smiled, waved to crowds, and appeared entirely at ease. The subtext of their presence was clear. We are here, together, fulfilling our roles, unaffected by gossip. Behind the scenes, according to royal correspondents who covered the family, a different strategy was unfolding. Kensington Palace cultivated relationships with certain trusted journalists and photographers, providing them with occasional access to the family in exchange for favorable coverage. This wasn't new. Royal PR has always operated partly through managed media relationships, but in the wake of the scandal, it intensified. The strategy seemed to be flood the market with positive stories and images. If the internet was full of affair speculation, counter it with content about Kate's early childhood work, about William's conservation efforts, about the adorable Cambridge children. Give audiences an alternative narrative to focus on. Throughout 2019 and into 2020, there was a steady stream of stories about the Cambridge family. George starting a new school, Charlotte's first day at school, Louis's christening, family photographs from Anmer Hall showing the children playing in the garden. Each of these carefully released pieces of content served to reinforce the image of a happy, stable family. Whether this was authentic or strategic image management was, in a sense, irrelevant. The effect was the same, to provide evidence that contradicted the scandal narrative. I think what's most interesting about the Cambridge's response is how it revealed the mechanics of modern royal reputation management. The monarchy can no longer simply command respect or demand that scandals be ignored, but it can still shape narratives through strategic silence and carefully managed visibility. By refusing to engage with the affair allegations directly, while simultaneously flooding media with positive family content, William and Kate created two competing narratives. One, the scandal, was all speculation and rumor. The other, the happy family, had official photographs and public appearances as evidence. Over time, the version with more tangible evidence would naturally seem more credible, especially as the scandal aged and new royal dramas emerged to capture attention. As with any high-profile scandal lacking definitive proof, conspiracy theories proliferated. These theories ranged from the plausible to the utterly bizarre, but they all shared a common feature. They filled in the gaps left by absent facts with imagination and speculation. Theory 1. The Meghan Markle connection. Some conspiracy theorists claimed the affair story was actually planted by Meghan Markle or her allies to deflect attention from negative coverage of her own behavior. This theory pointed to the timing. The affair allegations emerged in early 2019, just as Meghan was facing criticism for alleged difficult behavior with palace staff. By creating a scandal around William, the theory went, attention would shift away from Meghan's problems. The counter-evidence to this theory was substantial. There was no proof Meghan or anyone close to her had any connection to the story's origins. Moreover, Meghan's own relationship with the British press was so poor that it seemed unlikely she had the connections or influence to plant such a significant story. The theory said more about existing tensions between the Cambridges and the Sussexes than about any real conspiracy. Theory 2. The palace cover-up. Another popular theory held that the affair was real, but the royal family's enormous influence over British media had created a cover-up. According to this version, newspapers had proof of the affair, but were threatened into silence by palace lawyers and their connections to media owners. The story could only emerge in American outlets and on social media because these were beyond the palace's control. This theory had slightly more plausibility, given the genuine power of British libel laws and the palace's demonstrated ability to manage media coverage. However, it required believing in a level of coordination and control that seemed improbable in the modern media landscape. The British press, while respectful of certain royal boundaries, is also competitive and scandal-hungry. The idea that every major outlet would suppress the story of the century out of deference to the monarchy stretched credibility. Theory 3. The DNA secret. The darkest conspiracy theory claimed that Rose Hanbury's youngest child, Iris, born in December 2016, was actually William's biological daughter. This theory pointed to the timeline. Rose had allegedly been friends with William and Kate since 2015, making the conception period plausible, and claimed that this was the real secret being hidden. This theory was particularly cruel because it involved speculation about a child's parentage and identity. It also had zero evidence supporting it beyond timeline coincidence. Iris Cholmondeley's physical resemblance to her father David was noted by those who had actually seen the family, and the theory seemed to exist purely to make the scandal more sensational. Theory 4. The Norfolk Scandal Network. A more elaborate theory suggested that the affair was part of a broader pattern of aristocratic infidelity in Norfolk, that the entire social circle engaged in discreet affairs as a kind of accepted practice among the landed gentry. William and Rose's alleged relationship was just one example of a wider social pattern, this theory claimed. This theory drew on stereotypes about aristocratic behavior, but had no factual basis. It also contradicted the scandal itself. If affairs were common and accepted in this circle, why would the William Rose allegation cause such a falling out? Theory 5. The planted story. A few theorists went in the opposite direction, claiming there was never an affair and the entire story was deliberately planted by someone, perhaps a foreign government, perhaps a rival royal faction, perhaps even by William himself, to achieve some unknown strategic goal. What that goal might be varied. Some said it was to distract from other scandals, others that it was to generate sympathy for William, still others that it was part of some elaborate plan to eventually divorce Kate. This theory exemplified conspiracy thinking at its purest. The absence of evidence was itself evidence of how clever the conspiracy was. What united all these theories was their unfalsifiability. Because there was no definitive evidence either confirming or denying the affair, any theory could survive. Every piece of information could be interpreted to support the preferred narrative. William and Kate appearing happy together? Either proof there was no affair, or proof they were putting on a convincing show. Rose disappearing from public view? Either proof of her guilt and shame, or proof she was being silenced. The legal threats. Either appropriate response to false allegations, or desperate attempt to suppress truth. I believe what's most revealing about these conspiracy theories is how they demonstrate our collective discomfort with uncertainty. We want definitive answers, clear villains and victims, narratives that make sense. When reality provides only ambiguity, we create our own certainty through elaborate theories. The theories become more satisfying than truth because they provide the psychological closure that truth doesn't. Whether or not the affair allegations had any basis in fact, they undeniably changed William and Kate's relationship with Norfolk and with Anmer Hall specifically. The rural idyll that had existed from 2015 to 2017, when they had made Anmer Hall their primary residence, never fully returned. By 2020, it was clear that the Cambridges had shifted their centre of gravity back to London. Prince George and Princess Charlotte were enrolled in Thomas's Battersea, a private school in London, rather than attending school in Norfolk. This alone necessitated spending more time at Kensington Palace during term time. The family still visited Anmer Hall for weekends and holidays, but it was no longer their main home. William had also left his position with East Anglian Air Ambulance in 2017, even before the scandal, as his royal duties increased. Without the job that had anchored him to the region, there was less reason to maintain Norfolk as a primary base. The family's pattern of life had already been shifting toward more time in London. The scandal may have simply accelerated a transition that was already underway. But there's no denying that the atmosphere around Anmer Hall had changed. The house that had represented escape and privacy now carried the weight of scandal, deserved or not. The Norfolk social world that had seemed so welcoming now felt complicated and fraught. The very features that had made Anmer Hall attractive, the isolation, the distance from London, the tight-knit aristocratic community, now felt like liabilities. The relationship with the Cholmondeleys, obviously, never recovered. David Cholmondeley continued to fulfill his ceremonial duties as Lord Great Chamberlain, which occasionally required him to be at the same events as William, but the friendship between the two families was clearly over. Rose and Kate, once described as close friends, maintained perfect distance. Houghton Hall and Anmer Hall, once connected by neighbourly visits and children's playdates, became separate worlds. The broader Norfolk social circle that had formed around the Cambridges also seemed to fragment. Some families maintained their connections to William and Kate. Others quietly withdrew, perhaps uncomfortable with the scandal's residue, perhaps choosing sides in a dispute they didn't fully understand. The easy sociability that had characterized the Cambridges' early years in Norfolk gave way to something more formal and guarded. For Anmer Hall itself, the changes were mostly invisible. The house remained well-maintained, its gardens continued to bloom, its rooms still hosted the Cambridge children during school holidays. But it had lost something of its magic. It was no longer the solution to the problem of how royals could live normal lives. It had been revealed as just another aristocratic country house, with all the complications and scandals that such houses had always harbored. I think there's a melancholy to this transformation. Anmer Hall had represented genuine hope. Hope that the modern royal family could be different, could balance duty with normalcy, could raise their children with some of the freedom and privacy that most families take for granted. The affair scandal, whether true or false, shattered that hope. It revealed, or seemed to reveal, that the old patterns persisted. Aristocratic scandal, alleged infidelity, the impossible tension between public virtue and private behavior. Even if the allegations were completely baseless, even if William and Kate's marriage was as strong as ever, the damage was done. Anmer Hall could never again be simply what it was meant to be. It would always carry this history, this association with scandal, this reminder that even in Norfolk's quiet fields, far from palace walls, the royal family could not escape scrutiny, speculation, and the weight of public expectation. 5 years after the scandal first broke, its lasting impact remains complex and somewhat contradictory. The affair allegations never led to any divorce filing, any official separation, any confirmation of their truth. William and Kate remain married, continue to carry out their royal duties, and present themselves publicly as a united couple. Their 3 children are growing up, apparently unaffected by rumors they're too young to understand. Yet the scandal left marks on the cultural landscape that persist. It changed how people talk about William and Kate's marriage. Before 2019, their relationship was generally portrayed as a modern fairy tale. The prince who waited for his university sweetheart, the commoner who became a princess through genuine love. After the scandal, that narrative became more complicated. There was now a before and after in how their marriage was discussed. The scandal also highlighted the changing nature of royal privacy in the internet age. Previous generations of royals dealt with rumors and scandals, certainly, but those were largely contained to their era and geography. A scandal in the 1960s might be whispered about in London society, but would barely reach the public. By the 1990s, tabloid culture meant wider dissemination, but still within manageable bounds. The 2019 scandal demonstrated that in the age of social media, royal privacy has effectively ceased to exist. An allegation that British newspapers couldn't legally print became international news within hours through American websites and social media. The palace's ability to control the narrative, already diminished in the Diana era, had eroded almost completely. This marked a fundamental shift in the relationship between monarchy and media. The scandal also revealed persistent double standards in how male and female royal behavior is judged. Much of the coverage and online discussion focused on Kate's reactions and emotions. Was she devastated? Was she angry? Would she forgive? rather than on William's alleged actions. Rose Hanbury, meanwhile, received far more vicious attacks and speculation than William did, despite being, at most, equally culpable if any affair had occurred. This pattern repeated centuries of sexist scandal coverage where women bore disproportionate blame and shame. From a class perspective, the scandal illuminated the continued existence of Britain's aristocratic social networks. The fact that the alleged affair involved a marchioness, that it supposedly took place between neighbouring country estates, that it unfolded within a tight circle of titled families. All of this reminded the public that, despite Britain's modern democratic surface, ancient patterns of aristocratic social organisation persist. Houghton Hall and Anmer Hall weren't just any houses, they were nodes in a network of power, privilege, and lineage that stretches back centuries. For Anmer Hall specifically, the cultural impact has been to transform it from a symbol of royal domesticity into a symbol of royal scandal. Search for Anmer Hall online today, and the results are still dominated by affair allegations. The house's Wikipedia page dedicates substantial space to the scandal. Tourist interest in the area increased, with people visiting the Sandringham estate hoping to catch a glimpse of the house that had been the setting for such drama. The house became famous not for what it represented in 2015, royal normalcy, but for what it represented in 2019, alleged betrayal. There's also been a broader impact on how the British public views the modernisation of the monarchy. William and Kate were supposed to be evidence that the royal family could adapt, could be relatable while maintaining dignity, could balance tradition with contemporary values. The affair scandal, again proven or not, challenged that narrative. If even William and Kate, the monarchy's best hope for maintaining public support, couldn't escape the old patterns of aristocratic scandal, what hope was there for genuine modernization? I believe the ultimate cultural significance of the scandal lies in what it revealed about our relationship with the monarchy in the 21st century. We want royals to be both extraordinary and normal, both symbols of tradition and relatable modern people. We want their lives to be fairy tales while also being authentic. These desires are fundamentally contradictory. When William and Kate tried to create an authentic family life at Anmer Hall, away from palace walls and public scrutiny, we were simultaneously fascinated by and resentful of their privacy. When scandal allegations emerged, we were simultaneously sympathetic to their invasion of privacy and hungry for every scandalous detail. The Anmer Hall scandal exposed this contradiction at the heart of contemporary royal watching. We claim to want the royals to be normal, but we're only interested in them because they're not normal. We say we respect their privacy, but we devour content that violates it. We demand they be moral exemplars, but we're thrilled when they appear to fall short because it confirms their humanity, or our superiority. As of 2024, Anmer Hall remains a property of the Cambridge family, now officially the Wales family following Charles's ascension to the throne in 2022. William and Kate still use the house, primarily during school holidays and for occasional weekends. The property is maintained by staff from the Sandringham estate. The gardens continue to be cultivated. The children still play there when the family is in residence. But Anmer Hall is no longer what it was meant to be. It's not a primary residence. It's not the centre of the Cambridge Wales family life. It's a country retreat, a holiday house, a place to visit rather than a place to live. The rural Norfolk idyll that existed from 2015 to 2017 has not returned, and likely never will. Rose Hanbury and David Cholmondeley remain at Houghton Hall, just 3 miles away, living parallel lives that no longer intersect with the Cambridges beyond the occasional unavoidable ceremonial encounter. Rose has gradually resumed a more public presence, attending selected society events and continuing her work with Houghton Hall's art collection and gardens, but she maintains nothing like the public profile she once had. The scandal permanently altered her public identity. The truth of what actually happened, whether there was an affair, what caused the falling out between Kate and Rose, why the family's friendship ended, remains unknown to the public. Those directly involved have maintained perfect silence. The only people who know what really happened are William, Kate, Rose, David, and perhaps a very small number of close confidants. They have chosen not to tell their stories, not to clarify, not to provide the closure that the public craves. In the absence of that closure, Anmer Hall exists in a strange liminal space, both a working royal residence and a symbol of scandal, both a family home and a reminder of how quickly reputation can be damaged by rumor. The house itself knows nothing of these meanings we've imposed on it. It simply stands in the Norfolk countryside, its red brick glowing amber in the afternoon sun, exactly as it has for more than 2 centuries. What I find most poignant about Anmer Hall's story is how it demonstrates the impossibility of the Cambridge family's original dream. They wanted a normal life, or as close to normal as royalty permits. They wanted their children to grow up with privacy, freedom, space to be children rather than public figures. They wanted a place where William could be just a father, and Kate just a mother, where royal duty could be set aside temporarily in favor of family life. Anmer Hall was supposed to provide all of that. For a brief period, perhaps it did. But the scandal, proven or not, real or imagined, revealed that such privacy is impossible for the future king and queen. There is no house far enough from London, no estate private enough, no social circle discreet enough to allow true normalcy. The public's fascination with the royals, the media's hunger for scandal, the internet's ability to spread rumors globally within hours. These forces mean that every moment of royal life, even in the most private settings, is potentially public. The house remains, the family remains. The scandal, in some form, remains, not as proven fact, but as persistent rumor, as internet lore, as the story that won't quite die. And Anmer Hall, the Georgian country house that was meant to be a refuge from all of this, instead became the setting for one of the modern monarchy's most damaging scandals. Whether any of it was true hardly matters now. The damage was done not by facts, but by allegations, not by proof, but by plausibility. In our modern media landscape, perhaps that's all a scandal needs to survive. Not truth, but believability. Not evidence, but narrative. Anmer Hall stands in Norfolk, beautiful and enigmatic, keeping whatever secrets it holds. The red brick still glows amber in the fading light. The gardens still bloom in spring. The house endures, as these old houses do, outlasting the scandals and the rumors, waiting for the day when this chapter of its history becomes just another story about another family who once lived there, before the pattern repeated again with someone new.